Hey everyone, in this video I'll take you through how I've made this image that you see on the screen right now. I followed a tutorial while making this that I'm going to link in the description. So if you'd like a proper overview of every detail and how it's done and how to approach it, check that one out. But I'll be doing a quick rundown of how it went for me. Here's the 3D scene I've built to overpaint. And when it comes to 3D, you can take it as far as you want or as little as you want. As you see, mine is very kind of blocky, messy, but I can work out the lighting, I can work out the composition in here, which makes it a lot easier, even though things did change quite a bit in the painting process. This is still was super valuable to have. So if I change it to rendered, you see, this is what I ended up with to use as overpaint. And now with 3D, you obviously have a lot of render passes or many other like ways to ease your painting process. So all that I did is just separate them into foreground, middle ground, and background. So I rendered them out separately if I hide everything. So this would be one layer, then the midground, and then the foreground. So then when I'm in Photoshop or Procreate in this case, I can very easily, just kind of mask it or alpha lock it to this layer. Other than that, you can render out different passes. Like you have these, but not so much. So if I go into rendered, and if we do say flat object random, and if you combine the objects in a certain way, you'll get a random color per object. So you can also, select it just this. Since I knew that I'm gonna kind of go outside of this edge anyway, because it's a shape, but not the final shape I want. I didn't bother too much, but it's there if you want it. So that's the 3D part, and it's great because you could play around with the lighting. It's all in real time. If you want something else, my idea is to just have a very nice guideline for my painting. So it makes it easy because I basically have the drawing, I have the composition, I have the light, and all I can focus on is in this case, I wanted to focus on the style and the textural properties of different elements and just pushing the shapes a little bit more. So this was super, super useful to have. And now let's jump on to the painting. And the painting part is going to be a time lapse from Procreate. Now, I wish I could tell you how long it took me, but I can't, because the way Procreate does time lapses is just records a stroke per frame, I believe. And the time lapse is around 15 plus minutes, so that's a lot of strokes. But yeah, you'll get the gist. So I'm starting to paint from background to foreground, and at this point I'm just blocking out the main shapes. So I'm making a selection with a lasso and then painting in it. You can separate them by layers if you want, or not, if you're confident enough that you won't need to go back. I believe at this point I kept it pretty separated, because if I need to go in and change things. But the idea is to just have a block in across the whole thing, so I have an idea of what I'm working with, and also to try out new things. So I'll go kind of piece by piece, little by little, while figuring out how certain elements should look. So, trees in the background look a certain way, and then once they get closer, there's a bit more of a shape to them. So I'm trying to work out how it's going to be. So definitely going into a bit more detail than just the blocking in. But kind of just the way it flows naturally. So yeah, now you see I'm doing some big changes because I didn't like the beginning. But it's helpful to have it at this stage in very simple shapes, so it's quite easy for me to make big changes like that. And I've made a lot of big changes throughout the piece. I've changed the whole building. You'll see when I overpaint it, it's going to look quite a bit different than what I've had in 3D, because I just found out that certain things don't work once they're in here. So it's never too late. Well, not never, but it's not too late usually to just change your mind. Well, especially on personal pieces like this, then nobody's going to stop you. Sometimes when I'm painting, I might get a bit lost in not knowing if the piece is going in the right direction. Should I stick with it? Am I going to work through this kind of a shit stage in the painting? Is it going to get better? To get rid of that feeling, sometimes I find it's a good idea to just paint out a single area in a painting, which may be weird because, I'll have a almost finished looking detailed area in one place in the painting and then completely untouched in the other. But it helps me to say like, oh, okay, then if I push the whole painting to this level, it's going to look nice. So this is exactly what I'm doing now in this foreground element. Trees, I'm working out the textures, how the trunk differs from the leaves, how the bushes look compared to the tree, what kind of details I'm adding. And just, having done on one piece, I'm doing it on the other. And if these guys then look okay, then I'm going to be fairly confident and happy with the idea that I can push the rest of the painting to this stage, and then, well, in theory, it should just look okay. So I'll work out things that I have questions about, like how does the light wrap around this? How do I show the light direction on these? How do I make them separate from each other, make them stand out from the background? And it's a process that is going to be continuing on. There's going to be a bit of a back and forth, but overall, I have a sort of an idea of what I want from it, and I'm approaching it that way. So the main thing for me is to have a bit of a different textural look on different elements. So as you see, I approach the wooden fence a bit differently than I approach the trunk or the tree leaves. And then the tree leaves here, now in the top left, are going to be a little bit different as well, because, well, they're a bit closer, they're a bit more in the shadow. So I'm thinking about these sort of things. And at this point, it's already easier for me to do this because, again, I've painted one trunk already, I've painted some trees already, and kind of know which brushes I want to use for which stage or which area. It's just more just keeping the read in there, what's closer, what's further, where's the light coming from. And I have all that in my 3D, so that is dictating, but that doesn't mean that you can't just, start faking it as well if it creates a nicer look. When you see that tree appearing and then a few branches of them disappearing, that's just a brush I'm using. So that brush is kind of the whole tree, but I'm just kind of painting it flatly, and then I'm stealing some of the branches from it. So yeah, you see all those kind of nice looking twigs on the trees. That's, where it's coming from. So yeah, those came with a tutorial. So I'm kind of sticking with them as well, even though it does kind of dictate the style a bit, maybe too much. Like if I wanted to experiment a little bit more, that might not be the best idea because it does lean towards a certain look. But it was all right in this case because I was just kind of following along, but with my own take on it. So yeah, now I'm just blocking in the rest. I really want to simplify the ground because I've had some texture slapped on it in 3D, which is absolutely nothing like what I want it to be like in the end. So I'm just hiding it. Yeah, that's why, I slapped the random textures everywhere just to get an idea, but I'm not really using it too much. So if it's a flat thing, it's fine with me as well. But maybe if there's a bit more material definition, then it helps some more. Like you see on the bridge, I kind of like how the different stones are catching the light, so I can follow that along a bit more than, you know, just the noisy texture of the ground. I find doing stylized paintings and stylized 3D actually quite complicated. Personally for me, because I tend to add too much detail to things, and a lot of stylization comes through simplifying elements. So it takes a lot for me to kind of stop at a certain stage and not keep adding, you know, like having those pebbles on the ground just be this kind of a stroke of a brush instead of defining, you know, the different highlights on them. So for me, it's a lot of keeping myself from touching things when the indication is there already. Defining the cliff, and then we'll jump on the trees again. Well, by this stage, you can almost do it with my eyes closed because, you know, done a few of those trees, know exactly how I want to approach them. Again, you see the brush popping up and me stealing the some elements of it. And now finally, would be a good idea, of course, to start touching up the focal area of the painting, the building and elements around it. So by this time I had the method worked out, and as you can see, I'm first blocking in with a flat brush, defining the shapes a bit more and the lighting. And it's pretty flat. I'm just doing the gradations, even that with kind of sharp lines. And then I go back in with a textury brush to work over on those transitions, which then creates this look. Then you can go back in to also carve out a bit, because I don't want a full dome thing. So basically just working out the different edges. And then you add some of the nice twigs as well, and it's a final look. So it's a pretty simple approach. But again, I can't take credit for it, right? So I just tried out some overlay glows just to see if it might work in the end of the painting, but I turned them off for now. There's a few more areas I need to work out, so I'm working on the very dark cliff there, which is barely visible, and I think in the end I just hide it all pretty much in the fog, because it's just unimportant, and I don't want to be working out what's hiding under there. I don't want there to be a defined ground. So just another area where I'm killing off the 3D texture. Here as well on the bridge. I'll give it a bit more, because whatever is in light should have more texture definition, and then whatever is in shadow loses the details. Again, almost as a rule, you could do that. So whatever is in light, you give it more detail, more textural definition, and whatever goes in shadow, you keep it kind of soft and all the detail disappears. This works as well in realistic art as in stylized, because this is kind of how we see the world. We're obviously able to see more detail of whatever is in light, but with stylized art, we're allowed to push it and emphasize it a lot more as well. Finally, I'm starting on the building, and you'll see I'll go over it, and then I'll start over completely, and it's going to be a different design of the building as well, because, I mean, I've spent a lot of time on it, but I didn't like it in the end. I thought the windows kind of look weird. The whole shape that I've made in 3D, where, you know, the building kind of has a bit of a cut-off edge. It seemed like it looked nice in 3D, but maybe it was the angle, maybe it was just the lighting in here where I didn't see it working. So Sometimes you have to just kill your darlings, just start over. And you'll see the whole process, how I try to salvage what I have there. So I really tried using the textures that are there from the 3D model. And then, well, just realizing that it doesn't really work. So already I am getting rid of that little turd in it and then quickly just killing it all off because it's just too much detail. But this alone kind of refreshes it for me, right? It makes me feel better about it already because I'm not working with a huge mess. So I'm starting over yet again, and then I'm trying to simplify it. I want to keep the hint of what that texture is, of what the roof tile looks like, but I want to paint it in a simplified way and not every little kind of panel. This way it's much nicer. It's not overpowering. There's no high contrasts between, because previously on the texture it was very bright spots and very dark spots. So kind of get rid of that, made it more, put it all more into a kind of a mid-range. And now I can continue with the rest of the roof. So here I'm just doing the light part, and then the shadow I'm going to keep not detailed at all, because, well, you just don't see the details in the shadows. And just in case you thought that was over with the roof and I know where it's going, I'm going to do it all over again. So I'm just kind of turning on and off layers, seeing what works, seeing if what I'm doing is making any sense, and just cleaning my file a little bit. That's why you see things go on and off. And then I'm going to start over with a completely different roof. So this way, this new one is more of a, it has a front facing facade, and then it has the side of the building. So it reads in a way even simpler, which is nothing how my 3D was, but it was a better choice in this case. And this kind of thing can be really daunting to change things around at this stage of the painting. And you think that spending time in 3D and kind of putting the composition together prepares you for it, or, you know, answers these questions, and then you won't have to do it. But sometimes things either make or don't make sense only at a certain stage, I feel. And in this case, I had to paint the roof just to see that it doesn't work. So it's a completely different, well, not a completely different, but a fairly different design now. But it makes a bit more sense for the kind of a story of the piece. You know, I want the building to be the main element. And this way, you know, with a flat wall that I can paint a nice stylized wood on, it's going to kind of pop out much nicer. It turned out to also be a much simpler thing to paint and control, because it's kind of just a flat area of wood. Then I'm adding, just a few more elements on it to make it more interesting. Little windows, just adding a nice gradient from top to bottom, obviously, because I have the light, like a firelight at the bottom, so it diminishes really fast. Just a bunch of little things like that are going to bring it all together. I'm going to get rid of the roof of the door as well, because that one doesn't kind of make sense to me anymore, because I like the building's roof, that it has a vertical part and then a slanted part as well, and then the roof of the door being like kind of just that angle, like a triangle. It just doesn't work for me anymore, so just kill it off, paint a nicer door. Again, simplifies the whole thing and makes it work together a little bit better as well. Just, you know, because I've changed most of the front bit so much that the rest that was there wasn't working anymore. And that's, you kind of have to look for these things and judge as you go. Then a fun part to add some glow lights everywhere, just to kind of see how it might look in the end, because usually have this layer off, just so it doesn't get in the way when picking colors. But just working through, seeing how much I can make it pop. And then if you notice, there's little bushes appearing behind the trees. So I'm just adding very small, almost graphical details in there, but it really ties it together, almost kind of a silhouette read, even though they're not really part of silhouette, but they're more just to ground everything in place. And these are the final details that I'm adding all across the painting, just checking every layer now, cleaning up a little bit, and then I was going to call it done. So you'll see now a slow fade in into the final. There we go. So at this stage, I kind of called it done in my head. I posted online, and then I also got in touch with the creator of the real tutorial, and then got some feedback from him. So I'm going to do another slow fade in of how it looks after the feedback. So take a look. As the background went all brighter. So the main part of his feedback was that I'm not separating the foreground, background, and middle ground elements enough. Everything has a bit of a similar values. So I did like a work over the whole piece just to bring stuff out and push stuff down, so it all reads much better as different elements. So I hope you enjoyed it and it was helpful. I know it wasn't a 3D thing as the usual, but I enjoy both immensely, so maybe some of you do too. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you later. Goodbye.